Have you ever forgiven someone?
Sometimes you just really don't want to forgive them because they hurt you really, really bad. Like, I didn't really want to forgive my sister when she pushed me into the deck. I tried really hard to get my anger away. Then I took it all out and I said, I forgive you. It makes me feel good when I do that. I think it made her feel good too, somewhere in her heart.
You know, we've been talking about forgiveness now for several weeks, and today we're going to talk about hard cases. You know, there are some things that we have to forgive. It's not easy to forgive. It's not the ordinary stuff. You know, the arguments that you have, the squabbles, the tension that you have between family and friends. A lot of those little things that, you know, you can forgive. You know, it's not something that has hurt you deeply. But when something hurts you deeply, when you've been through an experience where you feel like you've lost something, well, that's what we call a hard case. Where something has been done to you and you just can't let it go. We've talked about examples of this. When you lose something, how about the parent who's supposed to protect you and look after you, and when you were younger, you know, the world was crazy. And maybe they were involved in some things where they had a lot of chaos in their life, and they brought that chaos home to you. And rather than feeling safety and security, you always didn't know what was going to come. You didn't know what was going to happen. And as you look back over your childhood, you think to yourself, you know, I was robbed of a sense of security that every child has a right, you know, to have. So you lost that sense of security. Or maybe someone who should have honored you and your boundaries and your sexuality, and they didn't. And maybe at some early age you found yourself being robbed of your innocence. Or maybe if a parent who always wanted the best for you, and every time you brought home a report card, they looked at it and they found one grade that could be better. And they said, you know, if you'd have tried a little bit harder, you could have had a perfect score on your report card. And you grew up always hearing about how you weren't perfect. And you felt like, hey, if I work really hard and I'm perfect, then I'm going to be accepted and then I'm going to be loved. And you look back on those early years and you feel like you just never were perfect enough. And you were really robbed of that acceptance and love that you should have had in those early years. Or maybe some of you grew up where your parents maybe just had a lot of instability going on. Perhaps they had their addictions and you didn't know if good dad or crazy dad was coming home after work each and every day. And home was just full of chaos, and there was always criticism of you and what you'd done. And then that whole process, you thought to yourself, you know, if I just do everything Dad wants me to do, if I take care of everything, if everything is just right, then things will feel safe and secure. And no matter how hard you tried, you were never able to feel safe and secure. Maybe you grew up in a home where maybe one of your parents loved you less than the rest of the kids. You weren't your mom or dad's favorite. And they constantly reminded you, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, but they made you feel like you were inferior, you were less. And they robbed you of a good, healthy sense of self-value. Or maybe you had a spouse that cheated on you, left you, and you were robbed of your future and your happiness. Maybe you had a friend that took advantage of you, a coworker that somehow sabotaged your career, someone who broke into your home and now you can't feel safe there anymore, or someone who stole something of value that you're always thinking about, how can I ever get it back? You see, all of us have these hard cases. A hard case is where something has happened to you, where you have lost something, and where you have anger and resentment toward the person who took it from you. They hurt you, they devalued you. And yes, you try to forgive them, and many times you work really hard on it. And maybe the last few weeks as we talked about forgiveness, you thought to yourself, I'm kind of at the point, I think I've really forgiven them. And you've made a lot of progress. But you start thinking about it, and the reason you can't totally let it go is because that thing that was stolen from you, that thing that they took from you, you found that in your entire life you've always been trying to get it back. Your innocence, your security, your sense of self-value. And in trying to do that, sometimes it's sort of led you down paths that aren't very good. Maybe trying to get back what you lost had put you in a place where you felt like you had to earn a friendship rather than a friendship being given. Or maybe you had to make someone like you rather than being liked for just who you are. Or maybe you felt like, I'm just a doormat. Everybody takes advantage of me. Or maybe you thought to yourself, why is this I'm always trying to be perfect? And I think if everything goes right, if everybody cooperates with my plan, if everything is perfect, then I will feel secure and safe. Sometimes we get to a place where we so badly want to be loved that we'll do almost anything to be loved. Do anything to prove that we're not a loser. These are all attempts that we have to try to get back what we've lost. When someone does something to us and leaves us with this dangling hard case in our hearts. This thing that they did to us, we work really hard, we get to these points where we say, well, I've forgiven them. But it keeps coming back in subtle ways. Keeps coming back because inside of us, we just can't shake that sense that we weren't valued, that we weren't cared for, that we weren't loved for who we were, that we don't feel that we have a future and that we're important and valuable. And here's the sneaky thing about hard cases. And that is that the way our brain works, it's always associating things. When we have a new experience today, it always looks back in the past and tries to find something similar to compare it to. And our brain is always constantly connecting the dots between what's going on now and what's happened to our past. And let me tell you, if you got things in your past that connect to some really scary, bad, hurtful dots in the past, well, some things in the present that happened to you are going to remind you of that, and they bring all this garbage and all these feelings from the past that you thought you'd put away, the things you thought you'd forgiven, they all come back. So let me lighten this up just a little bit, okay? All of you know Carol Evans. She is a highly organized woman who strives constantly to be prepared. Some of you may know this story, but years ago you went on your first mission trip to the Amazon rainforest. A very wild, woolly, scary, far away, out of the way place. And when we got there, she was going to get on a riverboat and we were going to come back to civilization for about a week and a half. That means on this dingy old riverboat, diesel engine, putt, 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 putt down the river, living on that 24/7, seeing the rainforest, bug bait for everything that lives there, eating foods that we had no idea what it was, and then meeting the wonderful people that live in the jungle. And so, Carol was looking forward to this. She was stepping way out of her box to go on this trip. And being the organized, prepared lady that she is, man, she had everything prepared. The clothing, the cosmetics, all the medical kinds of treatments that she would need, no matter what bit her, scratched her, caused her to break out, whatever it was, she had the medication. She was prepared for the emergencies. And she could only take one suitcase, and she had it all packed and repacked it. She was taking up every square inch of this entire suitcase for her trip. Excited, we all flew down and we landed in the middle of the rainforest in Manaus. We got off the plane, we all got our luggage, and Carol's luggage was lost. I think anybody on that trip could have lost luggage, and it would not have been so traumatic. But Carol lost her luggage with nothing more than just her carry-on. She had to get on a bus, travel down to the dock, get on the old riverboat, and we left civilization. No medicines, no ointments, no cosmetics, no appliance and beauty aids, no clothes, no toothbrush. The list just goes on and on.
Traumatic for dental hygienists.
Well, an interesting thing happened. Carol realized that there are no Walmarts in the Amazon rainforest. But she did notice there that she was surrounded by Christians. And everyone on her American team, and every one of the Brazilians on the boat, everybody was going through their luggage and trying to figure out what they could give Carol to wear, to use, to have some creature comforts. And everybody just kind of outfitted her. Just with whatever they had. A spare set of flip-flops. Didn't really quite fit. But pants and shirts and all kinds of things to wear and thoughtful things that she might need for her personal care. And someone had an extra toothbrush, extra shampoo. It was wonderful. Now, she did look a little weird on the whole trip, because you can imagine things weren't color coordinated, right? But that just all melded in to the wonder of the moment, because there's this great cross-cultural connection. I mean, you're looking at somebody you can't even speak to. You don't know the language, but they're wearing your pants. You got a connection, She's wearing your t-shirt. Hey, you got a connection. It just pulled everybody together. She was the center of attention. She made more friends on that one trip than most of us have made in multiple trips down to Brazil. And she saw how her greatest nightmare of being separated from her stuff, God worked through that and made that trip a blessing. Now, why am I telling you that story? Well, that was a traumatic moment. That was a difficult moment for Carol. Somebody who worked for the airline took something from her, and it was called her luggage. Her necessary equipment for 2 weeks in the Amazon rainforest. Something was taken from her. And trying to sort out, why did it happen to me and not to Pastor? Why didn't it, why this trip I was looking forward to, why couldn't it unfold the way I wanted it to, the way I dreamed it could be? And so she's forgiven the unknown airline person, you know. She's dropped that. You know, I think she's almost forgiven me for inviting her to go and razzing her the week and a half on the riverboat about not having her stuff. But you know, the feelings and the emotions from being separated from your stuff on this trip, it lingers. Because every time she goes to get on a plane and go someplace, and that plane touches down, and she walks down to the carousels to get her luggage, you don't think her brain is making a connection between the Amazon River trip and picking up her luggage to this new destination? And you don't think that when Stuart's standing there, and look, his suitcase came off, first one, he grabs it, he's standing there right next to Carol, and Carol's looking and says, where's mine? You don't think that's punching any buttons about, well, what happened to mine? I mean, we gave them our luggage at the same time, why aren't we getting them at the same time? And what if she has to wait until the end of all those suitcases getting off? You know that there's many panic attacks simultaneously firing, going off, right? Because what if they lose my luggage? Now that's the way we work inside. That's the way it works. And we can't stop those connections that our mind makes to the emotions that we have experienced in the past and in the present. And probably you know some of those connections to your past. Maybe you don't really know where they exactly go back to, but you know they're connected to something in your past when something that we call triggering happens. You know what it means when you says that I got triggered? Something happens and all of a sudden you go from your emotions and your fear and your insecurity goes from 0 to 120. And you feel this, and why am I feeling this way? You know, I don't understand it. You're being triggered. And for some of you, they're connected back to those hurts that you've had in the past from some of those hard cases. That's why some of you, when the tire pressure light comes on the car, you feel panicked. Or maybe the check doesn't get deposited in the bank the night that it was supposed to, and you're panicking. You lost your phone and you're thinking to yourself, I can't live without my phone. I gotta find the phone. Where is the phone? Why are you feeling that way? Maybe you're a teenager, as teenagers often do, forget to call home, tell you where they are or what they're up to, right? And all of a sudden you're wondering if they've been in a car wreck or whether they're dead. And you know that's not true. They're just out horsing around with their friends, having a good time, not thinking about you. Right? We get triggered sometimes when we post something that we think is kind of cute on Facebook and nobody notices. When we have a job performance review and we get a 9 out of 10 and we're thinking to yourself, why did I get a 10? And then all of a sudden you think you're the worst employee that works for your company. Some of you, when you burn dinner, there's this mini meltdown that's going on because something in the past where you messed up a meal and you dearly paid for that and your brain's making that connection. Some of you feel it when your husband forgets your birthday. Some of you feel that way when your husband hasn't noticed you colored your hair. Yeah, I could go on and on, right? But these are the connections that are going on, and they're going back to things inside of us where we have been hurt, where we have lost something, where where He has planted these thoughts of unworthiness, of no value, of insecurity in our hearts and our lives. So what do we do when those connections start popping, and when you feel triggered and you know that's going on? Jesus had a word for that in Luke chapter 17. It's amazing how Jesus speaks it directly to this. And I know you've heard part of this verse, but you probably never heard the connection and the context it's connected to. In Luke 17, Jesus is talking to His disciples, and He says, "If your brother sins against you, rebuke him. And if they repent, forgive them. Even if they sin against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times in that day come back and say to you, 'I repent,' you must forgive him." Now listen to what Jesus says. The disciples hear this, and it makes no sense. They can't believe they could do that. So the apostle said to the Lord, he says, "Increase my faith." Like, I'm going to have a lot more faith to do that. 7 times in one day, He's a broken record over and over again. Man, I'd have to have a whole lot of faith to be able to forgive him over and over and over again. And Jesus said, if you have the faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mulberry tree, "Be uprooted and planted in the sea," and it will obey you. You get what Jesus is talking about? He's talking about forgiving. He's talking about forgiving in those situations where you just think you can't do it. Maybe it's the 7th time, and how can I forgive them again? And what do the disciples say? Increase my faith. Because they know that they need a stronger faith to be able to do that. And Jesus says that if your faith is very, very small, if your believing is very, very small, then God is going to answer you. And He is going to make what you feel is impossible in forgiving, He's going to make that possible. It's a promise. So what this verse is telling us is that we need help when it comes to hard cases, don't we? We really need help. Even after we tried our best in forgiving in the hard cases, it seems like they still are tugging at us. They still have a connection to us. We just can't get away from them. And here what Jesus is saying is that Jesus will help us with faith to believe. To believe that within you is the unlimited capacity to forgive other people. You can forgive a person once, twice, 7, even 7 times 70. We have been created and wired with this unlimited capacity to forgive, to have faith and believe that God can empower us to forgive when we don't feel like it's within us. To have the faith and power to believe that even just the smallness of our faith can produce amazing results through what God does through us and in that faith. That forgiving other people can not only make us better, but forgiving other people can make them better. And that God can replace the hurts that are inside of us and can even resolve those painful memories of the past. What Jesus is telling us here is you can forgive your hard cases. How do you root out that sense of loss? How do you root out that thing that you've lost or replace it? Well, Jesus tells us that what replaces that bad, ugly feeling that has taken root inside of your heart It has to be replaced by something else. And that's really the reason that Jesus came. He came to bring us truth. A truth about that thing we're believing inside of our hearts is not true. All those things that are in your head, like I'm of no value, nobody can ever love me, I'm a loser. All of those things, Jesus has another word to replace them with. And when His word replaces that lie inside of your heart, then you're free. You're free. Now, I remember when I was very young, I was scared of the dark outside of the house. The darkness in the house didn't bother me, but outside, that was scary to me. And I think as I tried to remember about this and think about my childhood, I think it's related to two experiences I had. One time in the middle of the night, a tornado just blew through this small little farm that we were living on. Hit the house, tore up the barn, made such a racket, scared the bejeebers out of us. And you know, that memory, I still have memories of that, of how traumatic that tornado was, just passing over us. I was scared of the dark outside. And also in this same time period, there was a thunderstorm that came in. There was quite a bit of lightning. And I remember I was sitting in my bed looking out the window and watching the flashes of light, and a lightning bolt cracked and came straight down to the ground, hit an oak tree, split it into a giant oak tree, split it into right down the ground about 15 feet from my window. I felt every kilowatt of that energy inside of me somewhere. It was terrifying. And I think as a result of that, that's where this fear I have of the dark outside. I didn't want to go outside after it got dark, because the wind blows and tears things up, and lightning strikes and burns stuff, and it was scary. And I was just a little kid. Well, when I was about 5 years old, it was after these events, I was pestering my dad because he was going to hook up with some of his buddies, and they were going coon hunting that night. And I wanted to go coon hunting. And I pestered Dad, and he finally agreed to take me. I was 5 years old. So after it got dark, Dad and his friends got together, and they had about 15 coon dogs, hound dogs, all together, and they were all packing their shotguns, and they were ready to go. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just like scared, and what's going to happen? This really isn't the picture I had in my mind when I was begging Dad to go. So they were all standing around, and some of these dogs were running around. They started yelping, and they got the scent of coon. And they started running off toward that scent, chasing down this coon that they smelled. And when that happened, my dad reached down with his arm and grabbed me by my upper arm, and he just like picked me up off the ground and slung me on his back. My arms went around his neck. He reached behind me, took both of my feet, and shoved them in his back jean pockets. Kid you not. We didn't practice this. This was all a surprise. It just unfolded in like 3 seconds, you know? And I'm sitting there, and Dad's one hand reaches up and grabs my hands that are wrapped around his throat. He picks up this huge 12-gauge shotgun that looked twice as big as Daniel Boone carried in the TV series. And he started running through the woods. For about an hour and a half, we were running through the woods, down into the hollows, crossing the streams, splashing all around us. I was just holding on for dear life, following the sound of those yapping, those hound dogs chasing after the coons. And all the while when we were running through the woods, I had no fear, because I was on my dad's back. And all of a sudden, that fear of the tornadoes and the lightning, they were replaced by empowerment, because we weren't out there scared of the dark. We were the apex predators, as they say today. When we were hunting. And it was all about strength and speed and the hunt and the joy and the excitement of sharing that with friends. And I remember that my fear of the outside in the dark, that night, that fear was replaced with a strength and a calmness. It was replaced with this feeling of empowerment. And all that fear went away. So when the wind starts blowing outside and the sky looks kind of purple, Darla can tell you, I like to kind of go outside and look at it. And thunderstorms are now my favorite. I love to watch them. And it's all because that fear was replaced with empowerment. And it all goes back to that one evening racing through the woods at night on one of the great moments in my childhood memory, coon hunting. Replacement is what has to happen to get rid of those feelings and those beliefs and those fears that you took on when whatever was done to you in this hard case to forgive. Because these hurts and fears, they haunt your hearts, they trigger our emotions, they flare up when anything similar to them come up. And the only thing that will replace them is the truth of Jesus, the messages of Jesus that he says. He says to us, and this is truth, and some of you need to hear this, you are forgiven of your past. Jesus died on the cross to delete that sin from your life. He loves you just because of you. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to make him like you, because he loved you first. Your forgiveness isn't earned. It's given to you as a gift. No matter what anybody else says, no matter whether they value you or not, Jesus says, you are a child of God. Let that replace what's hanging on in your heart from old. He's your Father. He is with you, and he carries you all the time, even in the darkest and scariest of places. You know what Jesus says about that? He says, believe that. Believe that. Take that truth and let it replace that other stuff you got inside of you that you've been dragging around your whole life. Let that truth sink in and change your identity and how you feel and how you think about yourself. Jesus says if you have the smallest faith, even of a mustard seed, you can tell these lies that are inside of you be cast in the depths of the sea, and it will happen. I want you to think about that hard case in your life as our praise band comes up. I want you to think about that hard case. that's come to your mind during this entire sermon. I want you to think about what Jesus said, is that no matter how hard you try to resolve this, no matter how much you've done in the past, maybe there's still just a little bit of this that is not completely gone. Today you need to hear that you have an unlimited capacity to forgive. And the power of God can replace that lie and everything that's hanging on to you from the past with His truth. Today we can pray a prayer in our hearts and we could say, Lord, increase my faith. Increase my faith. This hard case, it has owned me my whole life. It's been something ugly that has been talking to me in murmurs every day of my life. It's something I haven't been able to get rid of every day of my life. Today you can just pray the simple prayer to Jesus and say, increase my faith. Increase my faith. What was happened to you was wrong. No matter what anyone else has said, you're valuable. Your life is important. Your life has purpose. A purpose that is dear in the heart of God. Please stand up. The words of Jesus today that are truth, I say to you today, you can start over. No matter how long you have been ruled by these lies in your heart, today you can have the faith to trust God, no matter how dark your moment is right now. No matter what moments that are ahead of you, you can have faith to let go of those fears. Because today you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid. Because you have the truth of Jesus. And it replaces everything inside of us.